So my boyfriend and I have been together for a year and a half now. I've met his mom, who is 67 years old, a few times, and she has always been very sweet with me, and our interactions have been pleasant, but a recent situation has left me feeling uneasy about her. For context, my boyfriend is white American, and I'm South Korean American. My parents have always emphasized community, generosity, and hospitality, which are huge parts of our culture. Because of this, whenever my boyfriend and I visit his mom, I bring back a lot of things that she and his siblings would like from New York, so we can all enjoy them together. Bread, pastries, desserts, snacks, etc. My family and friends used to do this whenever visiting, so it seems normal to me. On my boyfriend's mom's birthday, and on occasions that I know are special to her, like Easter, I created gift baskets and bought her things she would like and shipped them to her to let her know that we were thinking of her. Additionally, I text her every couple of weeks to keep her posted on what my boyfriend and I have been up to and check on her so she doesn't feel as lonely or left out. My boyfriend's father passed away a few years ago, so his mom lives alone and his brother and sister live within a few miles of her. Throughout all of this, she says thank you, and that's really about it, which is fine, but I always found it to be kind of basic and bare minimum. She will express her gratitude, but, for example, when it was my birthday and I happened to be at her house with my boyfriend, she just said, "Happy birthday." I wasn't expecting anything grand, but just felt that was interesting, because wouldn't you want someone to feel special on their birthday, especially if the person had made sure to make your family members feel special on their birthdays? Anyway, this year, at the beginning of 2024, his mom found out that she would need to undergo surgery on her head to take out a clogged artery. She needed a caretaker after the surgery since she's alone. This was a stressful time for my boyfriend's family, understandably, so I asked how I could support them and help out. He and his mom asked for me to cook for those days, and I was happy to help because his mom said that the doctor told her it would take 3 to 4 weeks for her to recover and that she wouldn't be able to do anything. So my boyfriend and I agreed to visit and stay with her for 4 days. To make this trip happen, I took off 2 days from work, left my 2 dogs with dog sitters for 4 days, packed my own supplies and spices to take to her place, bought the groceries to cook, and prepared extra so that she would have some for herself after we left. I also knew that my boyfriend's brother and his brother's girlfriend would be there for one of the days. So his mom asked for me to cook extra on that day since they would be visiting and didn't know how to cook. Additionally, his mom mentioned there was no food at the house, so I decided to bake some loaves of bread from scratch so that we could at least have something to snack on and eat during breakfast and throughout the day. I also made extra for his brother and his brother's girlfriend to take home with them. Cooking for 5 people one night, and then for 3 for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, snacks, etc. for 4 extra days was a lot of work, but I was really happy to be able to help. Whatever I cooked, my boyfriend helped clean, etc. It was a lot of work, but I was really happy to help, and I genuinely wanted to be there for my boyfriend and his family. However, some things that happened while I was there just left a bad taste for me, and I don't know how to get past this. Although my boyfriend helped with cleaning the dishes after dinner, something he said put me off. On the second day of our visit, I was just extremely tired. Cooking all day, being there for his mom, talking to her all day, etc., just exhausted me. Meanwhile, my boyfriend was just doing his own thing. He took a nap, cleaned the dishes after dinner, then went for a run. Later, when we watched a movie and his mom went upstairs, I asked him to just hug me and give me some affection. He said no and told me he just wanted to relax. Then when I asked him again, he nearly exploded and said that he's tired and told me to stop. Then he called me selfish for not letting him relax. I was extremely annoyed and asked him how he could call me selfish when I just took 4 days away from home, left my dogs with sitters, bought the groceries, cooked for his entire family, and spent every waking second talking to his mom. I said to him, how dare I want affection after just burning out from taking care of his entire family, including his brother's girlfriend. Afterwards, we discussed the situation, and I told him his treatment of me was unacceptable. He realized he was in the wrong and came around. However, the fact this even happened has me on alert now. The other thing that has sent up red flags is that my boyfriend and his mother did not offer to pay me back for the groceries I spent on this trip or to help cover the cost of the dogs. His mother gave us money to get groceries that she needed while we were there, which didn't even cover the cost of all the groceries. I decided to ask my boyfriend if he would cover some of the groceries that I paid for to cook, and if he would cover half the cost of the dog sitters, because I felt that this was just unfair to me. He complained about paying, and then said that he has already paid for the gas for this trip, and said, "Why do I have to pay for the dog sitters? They're not my dogs." That comment just threw me off, and I was annoyed because I never mentioned she's not my mom when he asked me to help with his sick mother. He agreed to pay for part of the groceries, and it took time, but eventually he came around about the dogs as well. Still annoying though. During these 4 days, his mom expressed gratitude and kept saying she felt like she was in a restaurant with all the good food, that I'm so generous and hospitable, etc. But some other things she said just had me take a step back. First, at the end of our time there, she mentioned that she had the caretaker leave early on the day my boyfriend and I were going to arrive at her house. The caretaker was originally supposed to stay a few more days to help with lunch and breakfast, to take some load off of me. But since the caretaker left early, I also had to cover all of those meals. My boyfriend's mom said the caretaker didn't cook her dinner, although that was the caretaker's job, and that she ended up having to prepare the dinners herself. This made me question why my boyfriend's mom had me cooking so much then. It's also strange that while I was cooking and preparing all the food, my boyfriend and his mother were sitting outside on the porch chatting. However, for the last dinner, she offered to help with some cooking, and for the previous dinners, she took the plates out. I just felt weird about the situation, that still, she had the ability to cook before my boyfriend and I arrived at her house, but then stopped everything once we got there. Lastly, during our chat on one of the evenings, she mentioned that my boyfriend was interested in visiting Texas. I told her I wasn't too keen on moving to Texas, but it would be nice to visit, and her response was that she would hate for us to think about moving to Texas because of all the immigrants there. After she said that, I think she realized she made a mistake because she quickly changed the topic, and I could tell she regretted what she said, but I thought that comment was funny in general, especially given my family's background. Anyway, before we left, I left all of my cooking supplies at her house because she literally didn't have any food if I were to take what I brought. When we left, she said she was very thankful and that she appreciated everything. I texted her when we got home to wish her a full recovery ahead and to let us know if she needed anything else. She expressed her gratitude again and said she should be all better soon. Since then, she has not contacted me or anything. I feel like I've just needed space, so I haven't reached out either. I'm not sure why, but I've just been feeling weird about the situation. Maybe it was my boyfriend's reaction when we were there that made me feel set off by the situation. Maybe it was his mom, maybe both. I'm not trying to compare, and I don't expect anything in return, which is why I feel bad for feeling weird about this whole situation. But I just know if my mom was in this situation and the roles were reversed, she would have offered to pay for the dogs, and she would have given us both money for the groceries we spent. She also would have sent a gift to express her gratitude for the help she received after the surgery, or she would have told me to take my boyfriend out to a nice dinner to say thank you. This has also made me wonder whether this is cultural. I may just be nitpicking now, but I feel like my boyfriend's mother really just cares about her family and not me, as it also reminds me of times when my boyfriend was talking to his mom on the phone and she was on speaker without knowing. She would mention to my boyfriend that it's certainly a plus that I can cook well. I don't know why that comment always irked me. Like if it were my mom on the phone and the roles were reversed, she would be asking me what I'm doing for my boyfriend while he's cooking for me. Now, for a few comments before the update. Well, actually, this post didn't have any comments. Now, for the update. 2 weeks after the whole cringe fest with my boyfriend's mom, I got an invite for a family dinner to celebrate his dad's birthday. Honestly, I wasn't ready for round 2, but what could I do? The dinner was at his parents' house, decked out with balloons and streamers everywhere. His mom really went all out. Not that she went all out for my birthday, but whatever. My boyfriend was all excited about the dinner, but I was just anxious as heck to face his mom again. To ease the mood, I decided to bring a homemade cake. Yeah, a peace offering, if you will. We got there, and the vibe was just off. The boyfriend's mom barely gave me the time of day. His dad, on the other hand, was super warm and even thanked me for the cake, so that was nice. During dinner, though, the convo was all about his dad's work. I was basically invisible. The mom threw out a few jokes about my cooking that felt more like passive-aggressive digs. My boyfriend was totally oblivious, just having lighthearted banter with his dad. After dinner, the mom pulled me aside. She told me she didn't want me to feel obligated to help with cooking anymore. I mean, kind of late for that, right? The boyfriend later said he was disappointed in his mom's behavior, which was nice to hear. A few days later, I got a surprise text from her asking for help again. I hesitated but agreed, thinking maybe this would help mend things. So I prepped a bunch of meals again, but honestly, I felt way more resentful this time. While we were cooking, she made a comment about how real cooks would do better. Really? The boyfriend noticed the awkwardness and suggested a family game night to lighten things up. Game night was a total disaster. The mom lost and blamed it on my cooking. My boyfriend tried to be funny and defuse the situation, but she snapped at him. He then suggested talking to her directly, which I was all for. We set up a meeting at a local coffee shop to clear the air. During the meeting, she apologized for her comments but insisted she was just trying to help. Then, as if on cue, she shifted the conversation to her health concerns. Classic. Later on, the boyfriend mentioned wanting to take a weekend trip to his family's cabin, which sounded nice. At the cabin, the vibe was relaxed at first, but then the tension resurfaced during dinner. His mom brought up my cooking habits again, joking about American cuisine. My boyfriend tried to defend me, and boom, another argument between him and his mom. After returning home, he vented about his mom's attitude. We both agreed something needed to change, but we're just stuck on that part. Mini update. Since the last family dinner, things have been tense. My boyfriend and I had a big fight about his mom's comments. He feels I'm overreacting. I don't understand why I'm expected to put up with her behavior. After our fight, he suggested therapy. I don't want to drag her into this. I mentioned taking a break, but he was against it. I feel lost and don't know how to move forward in our relationship right now. Am I the idiot for confronting my boyfriend about his shady behavior and getting dumped for it? My boyfriend, 27 years old, seems to put everything on me in our relationship. I, 32 years old, have a lot of trauma from my childhood that has left me with some poor communication skills and some emotionally immature habits that I am in therapy to work on. I've also started medication and really have tried and tried again to keep working on things. His main complaints are, I don't make him feel heard. I interrupt him during arguments. I have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, but I have worked on this and improved. I don't pay full attention always when he's talking to me. I don't fix issues immediately when he expresses an issue. I don't respect him. He feels that I don't stand by him when he's angry. At the beginning, he didn't like that I had male friends, so I cut them all out, which he still resents me for having to ask. I don't take his advice or input always, because I like to have all the facts first. So therefore I make him feel dumb. I don't make him feel valued. I cook for him, clean often. We split chores. Only he does a couple on weekends when he's off. And I don't ask him to do much because he doesn't like to do a lot when he's off work. But I do stress sometimes how much I need help because I work 6 days a week. I get him gifts and little surprises, but he says I complain and nag him instead of just letting him do things. I don't trust him. I've had issues with trust since the beginning, and he has always been protective of his phone, and it's been triggering for me. But he just says he doesn't like the invasion of privacy and the assumption that we should just be open that way without actual trust. I know I do have issues with this, but I do want some reassurance and kindness in this area so I can feel validated and heal. Instead, I get into a fight every time I express an insecurity. Because of these issues, anything that happens or any argument we get into, he expresses that he's done with this situation and he can't do it anymore. He always says how unhappy he is and how I've never made him feel loved. Last night, we got into an argument with the neighbor because I went over there to ask them to turn the music down after I knocked on the walls a couple of times, which I admit was wrong. I should have just gone over there, but he didn't take the hint, so I did, and knocking upset him. So he was telling me that. My boyfriend came over and escalated the situation to the point where they were about to start fighting. I did tell him I was going to go over there and say something so he wouldn't get involved. He had a temper, and I don't want to get kicked out of my apartment. He stays here with me, and I don't want to cause any issues, so I told him to back off and let me handle it because they were about to throw punches in front of this guy's kids at almost midnight, and that's embarrassing. I cannot handle violence and that kind of situation well, so I try to de-escalate it. All I wanted to do was sleep. It got so out of hand after we left that he said he didn't want to talk to me. He was done and had nothing left to say to me, and he had lost any respect he had left for me. He says I never act like a united front, and he usually says that in moments of acting like this where he erupts. He said really hurtful things, but he did ask me to leave him alone, and I should have. Granted, this was all over text, as he sat in the office after he left for a while. He's done with me, and I have shown him who I am and what I think of him and how I don't respect him. And when I try to stand up for myself, he says I picked a great time to start doing that. I ask him in moments why he acts like he hates me or why he gets so angry, and he always says, "Why don't you focus on what makes me hate you?" or "Why do you make me angry?" And how I never focus on the issue, even though I'm sitting there trying to. I just don't understand. He always says how unhappy he is and how I make him feel miserable, and I have never made him feel loved and never felt respected. I just feel completely lost, and I care for him so deeply, and I hate to see him feeling so sad and lonely. But I'm lost because I'm feeling hopeless and sad and lonely, and I don't know what to do anymore. Relationships have two sides, and if I'm making him feel so badly and I'm feeling so badly, what do I even do? Why does he still stick around if he really feels this way about me? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1, you are only hurting yourself. Sure, he might have his reasons for being terrible at relationships, but they are not going to just magically go away, and you don't deserve to be his emotional punching bag waiting for it. He hasn't earned that loyalty. Comment 2, he seems to believe that he deserves that. He says, I don't know loyalty or respect at all. He looks at me like he hates me, and I ask him why, and he says maybe you shouldn't do things that make me hate you. It is just constant deflection. Now, for the update. I'm not gonna lie, it feels like forever since the whole loud music thing happened with my boyfriend. It's been a couple weeks now, but it feels so much longer. After that fight, he packed his things and moved out, saying he needed space. I was like, okay, take all the space you want. Just remember, I had a life before you too. I tried reaching out to him a few times, but most of my messages went unanswered. Like, cool, you can just ghost me now. Can't say I didn't see this coming though. I threw myself into therapy sessions, trying to figure out how to deal with this whole mess. My therapist is great, but sometimes even she can't pull me out of my bad mood. That's when I decided to visit my parents to have some family time. We had dinner, and my brother and his pregnant wife were there too. I was trying to put on a brave face. My brother made a toast during dinner, talking about how important communication is in relationships. I almost choked on my food when he said that. I mean, really? If only my boyfriend had a brother like mine. After dinner, I went to the kitchen to grab some dessert. As I was doing that, I overheard my brother and sister-in-law talking about me. They were worried about my boyfriend's behavior and were questioning if he was treating me right. I stood there pretending I didn't hear anything, but it was hard not to feel like a kid getting scolded. A couple days later, I ran into my boyfriend at a local grocery store. he was with this woman I didn't recognize. They looked so cozy together, laughing and joking while shopping. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I went up to him, trying to act all chill and casual, and asked how he was doing. He introduced the woman as a friend. She smiled at me, all friendly-like, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. His body language was just so different. Then, a few days later, he texted me, saying he wanted to meet up for coffee. I was like, is this it? Is this how we end? I went to the coffee shop, and as soon as I saw him, I knew this wasn't going to be a good conversation. He seemed so distracted, almost like he was just going through the motions. He started off by saying how much he appreciated our time apart, which just made my heart drop. He said he had been focusing on himself and spending time with new friends, including that woman from the grocery store. I asked him if we could get back to how things were before, and he just looked at me like I was crazy. He said he didn't think that was possible. I could feel the tears welling up, but I held them back. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me cry over him. I asked him if he was seeing someone else, and he just deflected, saying it was just friendship. Yeah, right. A week later, I get this text from him saying he was officially done with our relationship. Like, what happened to face-to-face conversations? The text was so abrupt and cruel, with no room for discussion or closure. I was just left there, staring at my phone like, did this really just happen? I went to my parents' house for some comfort. My mom always knows how to make my favorite dish when I'm feeling down. I recounted everything that happened to them, and though they offered their support, I could tell they were worried about me. I then learned that my brother had a conversation with my boyfriend after that dinner, expressing his concerns. It's kind of funny though. My brother says he was concerned, but he didn't even stop me from dating the guy. My boyfriend told my brother that he felt smothered and couldn't continue in the relationship. That made me laugh, honestly. Smothered? What a joke. I was just trying to give him a little warmth, and he couldn't handle it. I guess that just means I have to accept that I've lost someone I cared about. He was a great guy at one point, and I guess I'll have to move on. Right now, I'm just focusing on myself. I'm throwing myself into therapy and trying to get my life back on track. I have a long way to go, but I think I'm finally making some progress. To answer a few questions, my boyfriend and I had been together for over a year before the loud music incident. Yes, he did help pay some bills during that time, but we never combined finances. We didn't share a lease since he was living with a friend. I haven't met the new woman. Am I the idiot for confronting my wife and her friend in front of everyone at a barbecue? My wife and I have been married for over 21 years. From our marriage, we raised a loving son who is finishing up high school and is the core of our relationship. However, our marriage was anything but blissful. Things never got off on the right track when we first married, as both of our parents had different values and perspectives. Her family was very traditional and valued money and wealth, something I did not have at the time. My family valued character, which they thought my wife possessed at the time. Suffice to say, I was initially looked down upon by her family, and this eventually trickled down to my wife losing some respect for me as well. Naturally, my parents began resenting the other side, which eventually led to both families being indifferent toward one another. In light of the family dynamics, we pulled through and were rewarded with a loving son. Conflicts began to arise as the demand to keep up with financial responsibilities grew, and certain expectations of me had not been met. As my son grew, my wife transitioned careers while I was attempting to hone my own craft, which started to take off. During this time, my wife would help out and work part-time with a close family friend, whom we'll call Javier. Javier was a somewhat successful business owner with a wife and kids of his own. He was considered like family since his wife was a distant cousin of my uncle. As her involvement with her side gig increased, I noticed she became more distant from me in our marriage. At first, I shrugged this off, chalking it up to us being busy bees. One day, we had a major argument over something about me not helping to pay for her car payments like her friends. She meant to vent and text Javier, but inadvertently texted me instead. I confronted her and eventually discovered they had been communicating with each other, sometimes late at night, and talking about me. Her excuse was that they were mostly talking about his business, and she was helping out with payroll and other tasks. She claimed that she did not have anyone, so she needed a friend to vent to, and viewed him as nothing more than an older brother. Foolishly, I believed her, and for the sake of our son, I forgave and tried to forget. As we moved forward from this, Javier became like family and was involved in a lot of the family dynamics. His family and ours would sometimes take trips together, and we would both help each other out. However, occasional trips together turned into regular trips where Javier and his family would accompany us on almost every family vacation. I shared this with my wife and expressed how I was uncomfortable since she always seemed to want to be around him and his family and was never content with just a family trip with just us and our son. She downplayed it and told me that they were like family and that I was being difficult and overthinking things. I became concerned and started to pay closer attention and found out he would sometimes pick her up from work in his work van during her breaks to go to his business to help out. I confronted both of them, who told me there was nothing going on. Javier, on the other hand, never admitted or disclosed some of the contents of the late-night text messages with my wife until after I confronted him. I became depressed and shared a bit with our high school son, who eventually opened up and admitted to me that there were a couple of times he and my wife stopped by Javier's home to pick him up for work, and that my wife told my son not to say anything to me since it would only worry me. He suppressed this since he didn't want his mom to be angry and to make me sad. Most recently, I had a business trip to Los Angeles and told my wife I would be gone for a couple of days since I had to help negotiate a matter with some clients. She went ahead and invited Javier and his wife to go down together. This was after I told her that if it was for pleasure, I would have my son and her come down and spend time with me. But this was real work, where I would be in meetings and crunching numbers from 11 a.m. to midnight. She eventually came with my son and the other couple and spent time with them while I was stuck working. I think the straw that broke the camel's back for me was when a month after this, we had another family trip with Javier and his family to Cancun. This time, my wife brought her elderly parents along. During our trip, my wife was always accommodating with what Javier wanted to do and often went with him and took our son, even when I was against it. She was very close to Javier and often chose to sit next to him during certain occasions instead of with me. I ended up spending the bulk of my time by myself since she was either busy tending to her parents or taking off doing things with Javier and others. I'm heartbroken over not seeing things earlier and doing something about it. I never caught my wife physically cheating on me, but I believe the emotional affair occurred and is just as devastating. I find myself in a conundrum since I'm reluctant to throw away 22 years of our marriage while our son is finishing up high school and I have to start over anew. Simultaneously, I can never forget the deceit and lies my wife conjured up, as well as seeing with my own eyes how she prioritized another man at the cost of hurting and disregarding my feelings and concerns. I still love my wife, but I feel I'm scarred by what has happened. Perhaps the most damaging part is that my wife still doesn't acknowledge anything wrong with her actions, which makes it even harder for me to heal from this ordeal. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. When your son graduates, it's a whole new ballgame for you as a couple. It's only going to get lonelier and more painful if things continue the way they are. You should let her know that this is the end of her brushing off your complaints about her affair. She can start this new chapter by recommitting to you, or she can be a third wheel with Javier and his wife while you move on. Presumably, she will choose Javier. Are you ready for that? Comment 2. Just be honest with her and tell her she has a choice. You deserve an immediate and resolute answer. She has to choose her family or him and his family, and she can no longer have both. If she refuses to choose, then her choice was him, and you have to protect yourself by leaving her to pursue whoever she wants. Now for the update. 2 weeks have passed since the Cancun trip, and things have only gotten more complicated. My wife and I went to our son's graduation party at a local community center. My wife was super excited about our son graduating and heading off to college. I know it was genuine. She had tears in her eyes as he walked across the stage, and the kid was really glad to see us there. I was proud of him too, of course. I was also really freaking glad to be there, but at the same time, I felt like I was at a funeral. This whole thing has been slowly ending the life of me. I just can't shake the feeling that there's this huge empty space in me. So yeah, the party was nice, I guess. My wife was chatting it up with everyone and taking pictures of our son with family and friends. I was doing a little bit of that too, but I also felt like I was just standing in the background. It was like I was watching everything happen through a big glass wall. I was there, but I wasn't really there, you know? Anyway, the party was winding down, and we were heading out to the parking lot when I noticed my wife texting on her phone. I was walking a little behind her, and I glanced over her shoulder and saw a text message from Javier. It said something like, "Can't wait to see you again soon." I could feel my blood start to boil. I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to confront her about it right there in the parking lot. I asked her, "What the hell is this? Who is this guy?" She brushed it off like it was nothing. She said it was just about some work-related discussion. Yeah, right. I mean, come on, I'm not that stupid. I told her I was done with her BS. She's been lying to me for a while now, and she knows it. She got really angry, and we started arguing. Luckily, our son wasn't there to see it. He had gone ahead to his car with some friends. It was just a mess, and I was totally done. I knew I had to gather more information, so I started keeping track of her phone usage and all that. I noticed that she was always leaving the house, saying she was running errands. I mean, she was taking 2 hours just to go get groceries or whatever. So one Saturday, I decided to follow her discreetly while pretending to go grocery shopping. I told her I was going to pick up some stuff for the house, and she didn't even think twice about it. I got in my car and pretended to drive to a nearby grocery store, but instead, I drove to a cafe where she often met with friends. I sat across the street in my car, and I was just waiting for her to show up. She didn't come with friends, though. It was just her and Javier sitting at a table, laughing over coffee. What the hell? I was so mad, I couldn't even see straight. I thought I was going to explode. They were sitting there with their 2 stupid coffee cups, whispering to each other, like they were the only 2 people in the world. I was about to lose it. I saw her touch his arm, and that was it. I couldn't take it anymore. I left the cafe and drove home, plotting my next move. I knew I had to do something. The next week, I made a fake social media account. I posed as someone looking to connect with Javier. I thought that might work. So the following week, I messaged Javier, claiming to be a friend of his wife. It was pretty believable, considering how many times we'd all hung out together. Javier responded excitedly and invited the new friend to a barbecue at his house. I was freaking out. It was like a present from the heavens. I marked the date on my calendar and started planning to attend. On the day of the barbecue, I arrived early to check things out. I parked a few houses down and just watched as my wife arrived at Javier's place. I saw them greet each other with a hug, and I just felt this fire inside me. I can't even describe it. It was like everything that was wrong in my life just came to a head in that moment, and I was ready to do something about it. I waited for the right moment and slipped into the backyard unnoticed. I had to hear what they were saying, and I had to take pictures. I overheard them talking about their little secret and how much fun they had. I couldn't believe it. I was standing there, and the pain was just running through me like crazy. I took a few pictures from a distance, and I stood there for a while, just taking it all in. After an hour, I decided it was time for a dramatic reveal. It was time for the world to see what was really going on. I walked into the backyard, held my phone up with the pictures displayed, and just like that, the world stopped. The guests froze, and my wife's face turned pale when she saw the images. I announced loudly that everyone should see the truth. I couldn't care less if this made my son's graduation party 1,000,000 times worse. Javier's wife was there, and her reaction was immediate. She stormed out in tears. My wife tried to deny everything, but the evidence was undeniable. Javier attempted to apologize, but I cut him off. I called him out for the betrayal. My wife finally admitted to the emotional affair in front of everyone. The whole thing was a freaking nightmare, but at least the truth was out there. I calmly collected my things and walked out. I filed for separation the next day. The day after, I told our son about the situation. I kept it straightforward. He was shocked, but appreciated the honesty. I moved into a small apartment. Now I'm just focusing on myself and my future, ready for a fresh start. Mini update. The party was the breaking point for me. I confronted my wife about the text from Javier, and we argued in the parking lot. I started following her during her errands and saw her with Javier. I created a fake account to gather more evidence, leading to the dramatic reveal at his barbecue. I filed for separation and moved into an apartment, focusing on my future. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.